RWA Automotive is a market leader, bringing data-driven decision-making to the automotive industry in the most safe, secure and direct way. Our motor industry experts have designed a solution to help you get transparency of your business while increasing margin and improving cash flow. You are loaded with data and spend a lot of time and effort collating reports, trying to get the information you need, at which time it may be out of date and decisions are then made on gut feel. Our solution pulls from your DMS system and integrates this information with any other data source, such as budgets, targets, and third-party applications, such as CRM, Showroom, and VHC. This data is enriched and all of your main KPIs are displayed on one visual dashboard. Track your sales and margin performance against targets across new and used vehicles, parts, and labour. Manage vehicle and part stock across your group. Benchmark dealerships and their staff on their KPIs in order to motivate them to do their best. Automated reports are delivered directly to your team's inbox, so they can access the information anywhere, at any time, on any device. Everyone in each department has the right information at the right time to do their jobs more efficiently. One version of the truth for your dealership. The solution is designed so that you can see in seconds what is happening in your business, identify problems and act quickly to resolve them, see where profit is leaking out and drill down to the detail to find out why. We unlock the power of your data. By empowering your managers with the information they need, they can focus on growing your business and increasing revenue. Your business will benefit from improved workflow, embedded efficiency and faster, more accurate decision making. Join the thousands of businesses across multiple industries who are using their own data to drive their business further and boost profitability. Become a data-driven dealer group now. RWA Automotive. Visit our website or submit your email now and let's discover your potential together.
Hello everyone and welcome to Automotive Management Live, and this session devoted to 10 1% improvements that your workshop can make to boost profitability. I think it's fair to say probably that the budget's done very little to help cost base in dealerships, and with commission disclosures going on and the case over that, there's further potential undermining of profitability. So money that can be made from workshops is naturally critical. I think British cycling became the poster child for the concept of marginal gains, not looking for one single silver bullet, but looking for several micro improvements that cumulatively add up to significant improvements overall, and everyone saw their success. So to discuss these issues today, I'm delighted to welcome John Hogan, co-founder and CEO of RWA Automotive, Graeme Potts, Chief Executive of Eden Motor Group, which runs 20 dealerships, and Steve Nash, Chief Executive of the IMI. The format of the session, we've got a few questions that we'll get through. We'll try to get through our 10 different ideas, but also to allow perhaps 15 minutes at the end for questions from yourselves. So please jot down anything you'd like to ask. We have an expert panel. Please take advantage of this opportunity. So gentlemen, thank you very much and welcome. I suppose the first thing to start is, on the basis that you can't manage it if you can't measure it and you can't measure your progress, how do you go about looking for where improvements may be possible? Let's start with you, John.
Okay, so Jonathan, we run analytics across about 400 rooftops, and so we sit on top of the DMS system and we would pull out all of the metrics, and for us, like, we'd have about 10 KPIs really in after sales, and what we find is, you know, you might be brilliant at 8 of those KPIs and your money is in the 2 of them that basically have been neglected, and that will vary from, you know, branch to branch and from group to group, and it's a case of finding those nuggets within the numbers is kind of like where we think the money is to be made.
Graeme, how do you assess performance across your dealerships?
Well, our industry is very KPI rich, and it's great that we've got some people who help us to analyse that. But our focus would be on true key KPIs, a few very, very important ones, and we particularly focus on the KPIs that relate to service labour. Clearly, parts and accessories, everything else, very, very important, cost base, but fundamentally, we focus on the things that are the biggest drivers and can be the biggest impact even with marginal gains.
Okay.
And so I throw out straight away, the KPI for me in service is labour utilisation.
Okay, thank you. And just to complete the second.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are few roles anywhere that are more closely measured than that of being a workshop technician. You know, so the KPIs are there. It's what you do with them. I personally think that I'd agree with Graeme on that one completely. I also think that we talk a lot about efficiency, but effectiveness, which is not a measure in itself, is the true measure. That is, you know, not just how much work somebody can get through in a certain period of time, but the quality that goes with it. So quantity and quality have got to be measured together. Okay. And that's really, that's where you should be focused, because if you've got somebody who can deliver that better than anybody else, you should be looking at how they're doing that and trying to find out how everybody else can do it the same way.
Okay. So do you have a sort of league table between your...
We certainly do.
Okay.
We certainly do. As part of our DOC, which is literally daily control, we have these key KPIs for all of our businesses. And behind that, clearly our managers would be looking at their teams to take up Steve's point about effectiveness. But I think I want to emphasize the point that business analysis around performance and improving profitability, there are many other measures, but around improving profitability, you need to identify the thing where you get the biggest bang for your buck, to be perfectly honest, and therefore in my view it's the utilization of that very high caliber, relatively high cost resource, that if we waste that resource, it is a massive eroder of profitability.
So just exploring that theme further, because it would be great to start with the first item. You've identified the area. What do you do? What measures do you put in, or what performance targets to make sure that each one is progressing and improving?
Well, for me, you start from sun, moon and stars. That people will say, that can't be achieved.
Okay.
So you start from sun, moon and stars, which is that if you're employing somebody, and this, all that I say is not a criticism of technicians at all, but the answer to your question is you work on the infrastructure and the processes to help them to be more heavily utilized. But you start from, if we're paying for 42 hours work in a week, how much work do we actually get? Because anything less than that is an erosion of your profitability, because hourly payment is gone, and rightly so. People get paid salaries, so therefore being paid a salary, we want to get the amount of work that is being paid for. So the first thing you do is find out what the numbers are, and then how you can make them better.
And that drives you to look at the processes that affect that, doesn't it? So, you know, whenever your technician is not actually working on a car, you're not realising the optimum that Graeme's talking about. And then you start to look at things like, well, you know, how do you control access to vehicles? You know, do you want your technicians wandering around the car park looking for cars, or are you going to pay somebody who costs you a lot less to do that for them? Do you want them queuing up at the parts counter, or are you going to get somebody from the parts department who's not on the clock to actually be serving them and making sure? I mean, I think most people now, I'm pretty sure, kind of draw their parts the night before, the ones they know they need, but stuff comes up during the day, and you don't want your technicians wandering off the job to go and talk about getting parts and things. So these are where the marginal gains are. You know, it's the more time. The other thing that I think is really critical in a workshop, doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's workshop control. Who does it? How good are they at it? Do they know your technicians intimately? Because whatever you think, even though people on paper may have the same qualifications, they're not a homogeneous group. There are guys who are good at doing certain things, guys who are good at doing other things. The person controlling the workflow needs to know that intimately and give the right work to the right person to get the right result.
Okay. And John, from your perspective, would this be the first area that you would typically expect?
I agree with exactly what Graeme is saying. I think it's all about the DOC. The DOC every day is going to tell you what you need to know. And what we found is, like, basically you need to make it really actionable. So, you know, the DOC will tell you where you are, where you're going to land, but then it needs to tell you, like, what are the bits you need to be actioning. So, you know, do you have cash sales you haven't collected? Do you have overage work in progress and stuff? And then if we go into the VHC, the vehicle health check, I would say, Graeme, that's probably the number one thing we're finding now. And what we find, we were down with a dealer group and we were looking at a workshop last week down in Portsmouth. And so we went through the page on the VHC, so you could see like what percentage checks were they doing, and they were doing like 100% checks on retail and warranty, which like is amazing, right? But they would be very much the exception. I suspect you're doing it, Graeme, but they would be the exception. And what we find is, you know, some people could be at 60%. And like, you know, multiply that with the number of cars you're servicing, and if you're like 20-30% off and you're doing like, say, you know, selling 60 quid red work on each one of them, 60 quid a shot times a couple of thousand throughputs, like adds up to big money all the time. And then, like, we identified then, you know, the service advisors, like who is, like, what are they selling? And there was one particular girl called Nikki. She had 20 grand's worth of work identified on her plate. She kind of sold 25%. So, like, that should have been 50%. So, like, you know, that month there was 2.5 grand just left on the table of profit just by not looking at the information. And then, like, on the DOC, we would put in all the idle time as well. We'd be tracking all that utilization, and basically, and it's all these little small things, which is where the money gets left behind, and it completely varies from workshop to workshop. And yes, Steve, I completely agree with the workshop controller as well. I think they're the most important guy or girl.
I think it's also important for the people that you're expecting to deliver the result for you to know what it is you're expecting of them. And do they have any skin in the game? You know, I mean, particularly if they're now on salaries. So what do you do to actually get them pointed at the things you want them to achieve? And clearly there always has to be a quality element. I've you know, I mean, the days of sort of time-saved bonuses and things which drove poor quality are gone. But as long as you've got quality measures in there, you know, and they should understand what it is you're trying to achieve on a daily basis. You know, it should be a collective goal for the whole team, because you're not going to get the result unless they know what it is you're trying to get them to deliver.
Can I put something on the table? And you said I'll give you the answer. We are currently doing 94%, which is not good enough, but it's better than
incredibly good.
That's by the by. But can I give you one hint? And I won't give you all our secrets, but one of them is to value unutilized labour, or idle time, as John would call it, to value variances in productivity by individual technician at charge-out rate, not at cost of labour. Because if you value it at charge-out rate, you will lose your hair over how much you're losing in opportunity cost. There's real cost and there's opportunity cost. And in the aftermarket, all that you're talking about is opportunity cost. I once came into one of our businesses quite a few years ago now and found 6 technicians queuing at a parts counter. 1 parts issue person, 6 technicians. At that time, we were recovering £60 an hour. So that queue was costing £6 per minute. Today, if you said £120 recovery, let's just say that number, every minute is £2. So if you've got 3 or 4 technicians queuing for 10 minutes, it can cost you £250. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
The great thing about that is that the part sales through your workshop are probably still your highest margin part sales, aren't they? You know, and I remember, I mean, going back a bit, but when I was on the retail side, you know, having a similar situation where most of the guys in the parts department spent most of the day on the trade business, where they made next to no margin, and the guys at the workshop counter were queuing up and waiting. You know, they had their most junior person on the workshop counter. It makes no sense at all, does it? It's
Do trade parts make any sense? And I know we'll have lots of independent, but we discount deeply to sell to independents so they can undercut us in service. Just being a little bit provocative.
Don't you also think that so right now we've got the oldest vehicle park in living memory, haven't we? I mean, it's 10 plus years average age. There's a ton of work out there. Isn't all necessarily coming through the franchise dealers, but there is a ton of work out there. A ton of MOTs, which always generate work. The sad thing is, whether it's in sales or after sales, a glut of work tends to make us worse at what we do rather than better. We tend to forget the disciplines. You get better when you're really, really having to scratch for the work, and that's really important too, isn't it? To make sure. I hate to, we have to use the odd anecdote. I mean, I said to you earlier on, my own local dealer has gave away £10,000 of work from me this year. They told me I needed two rear tyres. When I turned up, they hadn't fitted them and told me to go to Quick Fit. Now, I spent ages, the last thing I did before I left the Brown was put a new warehouse in place so we could stock all the tyres and give them more than one delivery a day. They didn't even offer me to leave the car overnight. Quick Fit did a bloody good job, by the way, and if I was anybody else, I would go to them in future. They also gave up £10,000 worth of bodywork, but that's another story. They're under new management now, under new ownership now, so there's a great opportunity for the new owners. I think the point is, anybody who says they do everything is deluding themselves.
Yeah.
There's always opportunities to do it better.
John, could I just pick up on this balance between the gains of doing more business and the gains of doing it more efficiently? So some of it's recruiting extra workflow, and others because we hear that from the outside that there's long queues of work waiting to come through. So I wonder how much is an efficiency gain and how much is a business conquest gain.
Yeah, like we would find it like the money kind of is in the consistency in how people are doing their jobs. And so utilization, we would see that kind of as like probably number 2, right? But then the efficiency rate, we would look at that as well, because we would find like someone's worked really efficiently, but then it hasn't translated into sold hours as well, and basically we find that, there is another level there where there's a bit more money to be made, right? And then, back to kind of what you guys were saying earlier, having all those parts ready to go, like having like the workshop controller in place, like the right person doing the right job, like that's all like really important. And then on the VHC, then basically, there's loads of technology tools out there to make that VHC, vehicle health check, all really smooth. So it's like really smooth from, the kind of experience that you had. Like there's no need for that kind of experience, because the tools are there to make all that good. And it's all about, people consistently doing the right thing all the time. And so being able to see that everybody is doing that is like, probably really important.
Thank you. Could I ask, Graeme, again, we hear about recruitment and retention issues of technicians, that they're highly valued, they've got rare skills and so on. How you go about the management process of putting them under all these measurable targets and at the same time keeping them motivated?
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 strands, and it's slightly differentiated between whether you are recruiting already very experienced technicians from third parties or breeding your own, which of course is the preferred route. But fundamentally, in any measured and analysed and targeted role, I always think the biggest payback is that the person realises it's good for them as well as for the company. And therefore, skills improvement is improving somebody's CV and life chances. Efficiency or productivity, whichever way you call it, will increase earnings. So you get increased skills, you get increased earnings. I'm not saying that is the panacea, but I'll tell you what, they're 2 very big drivers. Clearly, in addition to fairly dramatic increases in salary and so on and so forth, we have to also pay attention to the things that service, not just operatives, but after sales colleagues sometimes feel. Communication, conditions of work, where they eat their meals, where they get changed, etc., etc. They are all part of we value the contribution, but we don't always behave as if we value the people as much.
Okay.
I think there's a certain proportion of the technician population that always floats around for a little bit more on the hourly rate, but generally speaking, you're absolutely right, Graeme. I couldn't agree more that they mostly leave because they don't like where they are. So if you can look after them and make them feel involved, make them feel engaged. Look, we got 21,000 vacancies across automotive. Fair number of those are technicians. They're as precious as gold dust, So I mean, you've got to look after them, and those are the kind of measures that make that difference.
Do you do specific management training for people who get promoted to sort of workshop manager?
Yeah. We clearly subscribe to our manufacturer partners programs because they're obviously specific to both the processes, the analytics, and the product. But specifically inside our own company, we do a lot of skills training. It happens that the leader of that is here today.
Okay.
So we do an awful lot of skills training in terms of management processes as well as the specifics of the job. We try to coach people into being leaders, and that applies to all categories in the company. And we've been very clear about it. We don't just coach people with a view to it filling a vacancy. We don't say it's guaranteed promotion. What we do is we invest in people to give them greater skills. Before anybody says it, we realise there's a risk that we could be developing people for others, and very occasionally that does happen. But for the most part, we focus on investing in people so that they realise we're valuing their contribution.
Richard Branson, who said, "I'd rather train people and have them stay than not train them." No, I'd rather train people and have them leave than not train them and have them stay. And I think that sort of holds good, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Just turning to a different area, because I know we're going to come up with 10 different areas. Can we talk about sort of parts procurement and inventory and what opportunity there is there to improve profitability?
Yeah, so we find like parts obsolescence is like something that basically needs to be watched very closely. So like our good customers would be looking to transfer parts between branches so it doesn't become obsolete. Then also, like sometimes there's pressure for an OEM to like hit a target or whatever, so they'd be very wise about what they're buying to kind of hit that target. We would find a lot of obsolescence maybe is coming from, overreaching there. And then basically we would look at the parts margins and discounts like across the 4 different sale types. And we would find quite, you don't make much money on warranty parts, but we find quite wide variances in terms of how tightly that's been managed. And then I guess on the trade parts, then really, we'd have a lot of customers who would be looking at trade parts by route, and really, do we need to give them that discount? Are they worth having? Are we making money out of that, people? And then I think, like a lot of groups as well, or workshops would have like a Dutch guy working with them called van sales, right? And basically, that's not really broken out well enough to analyse what's actually happening. And we would find parts is kind of nearly forgotten or taken for granted, but there's still a lot of money in there.
I understand Van Nistelrooy's looking for a job, so he might be a van salesman.
Is parts a key focus for your business?
I will just give you some practical illustrations. John's pushing at a door that we opened some while ago, which is you've got to question the we're in a period of obviously quite high interest rates now. Historically not, but compared with the last 10, 15 years. So inventory to hold is very, very expensive. To then add to that obsolescence. So we shun stocking parts like tomorrow. With most manufacturers and with most factors, the rapid delivery multi-times per day, etc., and I'm going to say it, but I hope it doesn't get too much reported, the stranglehold of OEMs on only OEM parts, even in franchise dealers, is looser than it was. And therefore finding alternative sources, both for convenience, so you don't have to have inventory, but also for acquisition price, is a route that all retailers should be looking at. So, to put it in context, we today have just about £1 million worth of parts in our business, including parts on whips, parts designated for jobs. 5 years ago, we would have had 7.5 million.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the world has changed so massively over the last 20 years or so. By the time I left BMW, some of our dealers were getting 3-4 deliveries a day. So I mean, the amount of space they needed to take up for parts storage and the availability had changed out of all recognition. If you're not fully using that, you're crazy. One of the things that I remember vividly is not long before I left, having a meeting with the pricing guys from Munich. And it was kind of a paradox, because my guys were always arguing for better prices on brakes and things like that, because, Euro car parts were cheaper than us and all the rest of it. And actually what they were saying is, look, you've got, whatever it was, 25% of the brake business, and it's pretty steady. You're never going to beat Euro car parts, because wherever you are, they always, or whoever that is, ECP, GSF, whoever it may be, they peg themselves about 10% below you. So you might as well put your price up, because they'll put their price up as well. And it's completely counterintuitive, but even we from the central point of view we're chasing our tails, really. And yeah, I'm 12 years out of it now, so I can actually say, if I were back on the retail side, I'd be looking at where I can get the best deals and the best supply. So that would include occasionally using external suppliers.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And just again, taking the British cycling example, it's not a one-off measure, it's constant momentum. So could I ask, firstly, what's a meaningful period over which to measure a performance improvement? And secondly, how do you make
a couple of hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You've got colleagues nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's relentless though, isn't it?
Okay. And how do you maintain that momentum? Do you, across, John would single out a number of areas. Do you cascade down through your number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to number 10 on your KPI priority, and then go back to 1, or do you, how do you select these areas?
I agree with you, Graeme. You want to see it happen during the day, once you've had your chat. But then, strategically, then you want to see it happen over a longer period of time. So we find sending out a DOC every morning, you can see, look, is my monthly gate getting better? And even when we send them out, what everybody has worked, like their productivity, efficiency, etc., we would send it out for month to date, but then we'd also send it out for yesterday. And then, one of the pages we would show is, what's your best and worst jobs for yesterday. So rather than waiting for, the management accounts to come out, or see your composites, whatever, it's all about making it happen within the month, and learning. And then I think, league tables are probably the best way of kind of motivating people. Kind of the peer pressure is the best thing. Yeah. And but then you want to be tracking it over a period of time. Like a board level, you'll be looking at it monthly, and but really at kind of workshop level, it's hourly, daily, weekly. Building up to the month.
I think we need to bear in mind that the Brailsford protocol was dealing with people who were already elite athletes. So to me, the answer is, where do you start from? If you've got a business or a workshop that's got 75% utilisation and 82% productivity, it's quite clear that you just have to look at those very basic things.
Yeah.
To answer the question about do you start 1 to 10 and back, I personally believe you've got to choose the true key ones, and they are looked at all the time. But the other thing is, once you get an acceptance from your leaders and your team what good looks like, then that has to be what's called lockstepped. So if you're at 82 and we're saying over the next month or two we're going to get ourselves to 86, then 85 the following month might be worth a nod and a comment, hey, watch that. 82 or 78 is completely unacceptable. So you've got to get a lockstep on what is the norm and what's the expectation. Only then can you say, right, we're making tweaks like an elite athlete who's been pushed to go even further. So focus on the key KPIs and get them to an acceptable level. And I know I don't want to cause conflict with anybody at all, but until they are at an acceptable level, the others should almost be in the background.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, the entire team, right the way down to the productive people, need to understand what you're trying to achieve and have some skin in the game, because otherwise, you're not in lockstep, are you?
Yeah.
I would have said, like, early on when we were doing analytics for our customers, we would have kind of made that mistake, Graeme, of basically we said, look, like, there's 10 here, like, really, you know, you could be looking at, but really people can only focus on like 2 or 3 at the most at any one point in time.
Yeah.
And then, like, you nail them, and then the trick is to keep them nailed, right? And then you move on to the next one. So it might take you like 2 years to get around all of them. And I think that is the key, is just like, you know, once you have it, you have to hold it. And then that's kind of where you grow profit upon profit.
Thank you. Could just throw it open. Do we have any questions that anybody would like to ask? Any hands up? There's a roving mic. Yes, sir. Could you just hold on for the microphone? Sorry, please, could we have the mic?
Here it comes.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Have we got enough capacity in the dealer network as far as workshops are concerned? Lead times are...
Treat it like an ice cream.
So yeah, lead times are ridiculous at the moment in dealers. So have we got enough capacity, and should that be something we should look at? Are we missing an opportunity?
Steve,
Right,
how about
well, okay. I would say you've got... Yeah, but I believe. Look, the capacity issue is one that always gets talked about because it kind of ebbs and flows, doesn't it? At the moment, as I said, there's and for the kind of foreseeable future, there's going to be a lot of work around because there's this aging park and there's a lot of servicing work being done. But you've really got to sweat the asset you've got before you start looking at investing in more capacity, because, you know, as I say, it ebbs and flows. That may not always be the case going forward. So you've got a building that's there 24 hours a day. You know, how much are you using it? What are you using it for? You know, is all the work that you're putting through at the optimum times retail work? You know, I mean, there are so many things people do, aren't there, to extend their productive time. A lot of people, I don't know whether you do this at all, Graeme, but a lot of people have their technicians on extended days, but 4-day weeks, so that they can work into the evenings and so on. There's a load of methods you can use to get more out of what you've got. But I would be looking to see that all of those numbers were pointing north, and you know, that we were optimizing what we had before I'd be looking to spend money on extra capacity.
I think it's a very fair question, and my answer would be, if you've got, say, as an industry, we've got 80% utilization, and you can drive it to 90, that increases capacity by 13%. No bricks, no steel, no more people. So I'm not saying it's the answer to everything, but in our company we call it free money, because it's already bought and paid for. So if we can drive utilization, and then you get the factor that if you're managing your people through workshop control correctly, and you give both skills training development and you give the work to the fastest, most capable people, you get the amplification of productivity as well. So whilst, and I would say as a business operator in very challenging times for franchise dealerships, the last thing I want to do at the moment is invest more into facilities, because it's just very, very expensive. More people, fantastic, they're very hard to get. The more you're looking for them, the price goes up. We love to pay people well, but there's a limit as to how far you can go. So why not focus on getting more out of what you've got? And my answer about motivating people is, if we achieve that, everybody involved does better out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, and then just one more, and then I'll pass to my colleague. So on the KPIs that we're measuring, do you do the split between the fleet customer and the retail customer, and which is more profitable?
I wouldn't actually have an answer for that question. We'd probably focus more on the retail customers, I would say. So we actually haven't analysed them between the two, but we're like probably early enough stages on our benchmarking. Like, it's only in the last probably 3 months we've actually lined up our customers against each other, and then obviously when the budget came along, I would say probably most of our customers were hit by maybe $500,000 to $2 million on the staff cost. And so we benchmarked them then probably on the 10 KPIs I was talking about rather than going deeper. And I think we found probably maybe 9 million of opportunity within the existing capacity before we extend. So I don't actually have an answer to your second question.
It's a difficult one, isn't it, the fleet one, because you're up against direct competition, aren't you? Quite a few of them use national independent chains and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. There's not an easy answer to that one. If somebody's giving you an awful big parcel of work, you can't be too racy in terms of what you ask them, ask for in terms of an increase. But they will understand that, to some extent, that all costs have increased, and that's included. But it's a difficult one because, like I say, I know that a lot of the big fleets split their work between some franchise dealers, some independent chains, and you don't want to. You might not want to send them in the other direction, but costs have gone up for everybody, the independents as well, and so some increase in cost, to keep pace with your costs, is acceptable, I think.
I think there is a little bit of maths in this. Generally, there will be a discount from normal retail recovery rate for fleet business, but it's normally on younger cars, and therefore we should expect the productivity on that job to probably be a little bit better. But there's also, we are, as franchise retailers, I have to say, we're being prejudiced against by the very point that was raised about them being allowed to go to national chains for normal, good value servicing. And when we are being disadvantaged by getting all the analytics, the squeaks and the rattles, and I know this is going to get reported, so I shouldn't really say it, but they should go at the back of the queue.
It's weird because, for the longest time, for as long as I can remember, the trend in what we see through the workshops has been, if you went back 20, 25, 30 years, you saw a whole variety of work. You saw easy stuff, lots of stuff in the middle, engine rebuilds, gearbox overhauls, all that sort of stuff, and then the difficult diagnostic stuff. I'd say the easy stuff's got easier, the difficult stuff's got more difficult because the cars are more complicated. Stuff in the middle has largely disappeared. So you've really got to make, the best you can out of that easy stuff. An oil service these days, we don't look at rear axles or gearboxes anymore. It's just a straightforward oil change. So you've got to absolutely optimize that kind of work and not send people to Quick Fit when they need new tyres.
Fair play.
There's a gentleman there.
Hopefully it's working now. You've partly answered my question anyway, but what level of support pressure, dare I say, do you actually get from the manufacturers onto the dealer world to reduce your lead time for warranty repair work? Obviously we're in the fortunate position, we've got our own workshops, we, like you say, do the creamy work ourselves. The warranty work we can't do. It's got to come to the dealer to be done. Either that or we make a commercial decision and take it as own cost and write it off ourselves, or we have to get in the queue, and very often our vehicles get bumped down the queue because £80 an hour for a warranty job isn't as nice as £126, £130 an hour for a nice creamy service. So what level of support are you getting from the manufacturers to reduce that time and ultimately satisfy the fleet customer that he's got no option but to use you guys?
I think that one's going to fall to me, isn't it?
It was brilliant in my day.
As has been said, cars have got much more complicated, and the nature of faults are very different from basic electrics and basic mechanicals. And everything's got more expensive, and manufacturers, understandably trying to protect their own revenues and profitability, don't have as much resource to help franchise dealers. And I'm not saying they don't wish to, but they don't have as much resource. But frankly, in the current phase over the last 3 to 5 years, the rapid escalation of technology, which is in almost all cars now, the stuff that the government's forced on us with lane indications and all the noises, my daughter-in-law says her little car she's got drives her mad because it's warning her every few minutes about something. That kind of technology creep is accelerating faster than the analytical ability of manufacturers and their technical teams to give solutions. So it's not a good situation. It's not by design, it's by default.
Yeah. And no easy solution, really.
No. Yeah. We've got time for one more question. If is it? I'll just Thank you. It's okay. If you hold it right close to your chin, that would be great. Thank you.
Does that work? Yes. Thank you to the presenters. I thought that was excellent, and I certainly learned a lot. I noticed that a lot of your improvements are focused on workshop efficiency and revenue gains, but I'm curious to ask about the role of customer experience, because I think we all still know that quite often in after sales there are issues with either cost uncertainty, mistrust, perhaps communication, and it's well understood that a poor customer experience is a key driver for people to perhaps look to a different brand for their next car. What do you think are the 1% improvements we could make in customer experience, and what should we measure?
I would say that I mean, actually, I've been a retail customer now for the last 12 years, and you know, I've had generally quite good experiences, apart from the one I've just had. But if you look at it from the customer's point of view, I always used to say when I was still at the OEM, you could actually today, I mean, for that early service work, you know, first oil service or whatever, you could actually take the car in and do nothing to it. As long as you gave it a good clean, the customer would be happy. Conversely, you could do a fantastic service, giving them the car back dirty, and they'd be very unhappy, and they would perceive that you hadn't done a great job. So you've got to actually understand it from the customer's point of view. And unfortunately, you know, the squeaks and the rattles and things like that, which are a pain in the neck from your point of view, are the very things that mean an awful lot to the customer. So if you want to retain customers, unfortunately, you have to be on point with that stuff. You know, it's a weird situation. I mean, you know, it's a wonder we ever get it right, really, because you book your car in with somebody, you turn up on the day and probably talk to somebody else. That person talks to somebody in maybe workshop control. That person then talks to a technician. It's like a chain of sort of Chinese whispers. It's a wonder we ever get it right, really. But it's really important to make sure that you understand what is most important to the customer. You know, and that's really difficult while you're doing all of these other things about improving your own efficiency. But if you lose sight of that, you will lose the customer.
I think it's an extremely good point, but we focused on efficiency and productivity measures because we're talking about how to be more profitable with the business we've got. Retaining and growing customers, I would say you've mentioned the word. For me, the biggest single thing is communication. Yeah. And one of the things that we are weakest at is explaining without jargon and without being in any way condescending what can and can't be done with a motor car. Because we need to make sure that the customer realises that there is complexity and multi-causal effect of problems with the vehicle. And I know I'm going to start talking jargon, we mustn't do that. But we try as much as possible to have a technical expert in each of our businesses who will speak to customers in those situations rather than it being a rush job at 5 o'clock to get 20 customers away with their invoices. And communication to me is the answer.
It's funny, I mean, I'm sorry to cut, but I learned years ago that if I stood in front of a customer in my suit and tried to explain something like that, however well I did it, it didn't come across anywhere near as well as somebody in an overall doing it. Yeah. That person was genuine as far as they were concerned, and they believed it. If they got it from me, they thought it was, you know, flannel. Probably was.
Well, I'd just like to say, sorry, we have to wrap up now, but a huge thank you to Steve, to Graeme, and to John. I think it's been a fascinating session. I'm very grateful for your time and help. Thank you. Thank you very much.